Right now, when you take the Eagle test drive, you can get an incredible deal, and here to tell you more about it, I guess they're supplying me with my own stunt double.
Back in 1988, Chrysler used the name of the last model built by newly acquired American Motors to create a new car brand called Eagle.
Cut. Look at this picture.
Although Eagle was marketed and sold alongside Jeep, all Eagle cars owe their existence to other current or former car brands, namely AMC, Renault, and Mitsubishi. Although Chrysler really only wanted the Jeep brand, they were contractually obligated to also sell the Renault models once sold by AMC. So they took those models, along with some from Mitsubishi, to create a new brand that ultimately proved to have little identity or purpose, leading to its end only 10 years later, just as the merger with Daimler started in 1998.
So we wondered, what does Renegade Biker think? We're here with the editor, Pork Chop, here at the Chrysler Test Track.
This is the story of the short-lived Chrysler brand called Eagle. This is my old car.
All in all, the styling and finesse transcends the normal expectations of a sports car enthusiast.
Quite an endorsement, Pork Chop.
Come experience what lies beyond the sports car. American Motors introduces Eagle SX4.
One of the first episodes on my channel back in 2021 was about the AMC Eagle, the last model sold by American Motors before Chrysler purchased them in 1987. AMC started a joint venture with French automaker Renault in 1979, and soon after Renault acquired nearly 50% of AMC. Any models developed in the 1980s were co-developed with Renault, making the name American Motors seem disingenuous at best. AMC was best known for their Jeep brand, and in fact, that was the only reason Chrysler CEO Lee Iacocca wanted AMC, as it would add a popular line of sport utility vehicles to their lineup.
The rugged all-new Cherokee, the luxurious all-new Wagoneer. They're leaner, they're meaner, and they now join the world's largest selection in four-wheel drive.
SUVs were not the dominant member of the automotive industry back then, as they are today. But the addition of the Jeep Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee, and the Wrangler would quickly rank among Chrysler's top-selling vehicles following their acquisition of AMC.
Go for the good times, go for the fun.
But somewhat forgotten was the all-wheel drive Eagle, which remained under the AMC brand and sold alongside Jeeps up until 1988. Although Iacocca only wanted the Jeep line, Renault would only agree to the acquisition if Chrysler also found a home for other Renault passenger car models that were co-developed with AMC. However, Iacocca ultimately only followed through on 2 of the 4 jointly built models. Following the acquisition, Iacocca ended production of the subcompact Renault Alliance and Encore, which were based on the Renault 9 and 11, and had been in production in Kenosha, Wisconsin since 1983. Both models competed directly with the Dodge Omni and Plymouth Horizon subcompacts, and the Colt, which Chrysler imported from Mitsubishi.
I can see myself in a Renault Encore.
Renault.
Instead, Chrysler agreed to inherit the Premier and Medallion, which were based on the Renault 25 and 21. European styling and technology was becoming a popular trend in the US in the 1980s, as BMW and Mercedes had proven. So if marketed properly, this had the potential to be a big win for Chrysler. The final model Chrysler accepted from AMC was the Eagle wagon, the lone model remaining that was not a Renault design. By 1987, the Eagle was only sold as a wagon, as AMC had since discontinued the Eagle's slower-selling 2- and 4-door sedan versions. Chrysler now owned the Eagle name, but obviously couldn't continue marketing the original Eagle wagon as an AMC, so it was simply called the Eagle wagon. It wasn't a Dodge or a Plymouth, or really any other Chrysler brand, but it ultimately sold at what would become Jeep Eagle dealerships. Some of the old AMC Jeep dealers were consolidated with existing Chrysler Plymouth dealers, which was a win for Chrysler and Plymouth to have some much different and well-needed product variety to add to their lineup. Although Eagle was a brand of Chrysler, they didn't have the typical Chrysler Pentastar badging. Instead, the only brand badging was a new Eagle brand logo. For 1988, the former AMC Eagle wagon was now among the Jeeps and former Renault models sold at these new Jeep Eagle dealerships. But unlike the new Eagle badging noted earlier, the wagon still had its original AMC badging, as well as vehicle identification numbers, or VINs, that were the same format as they were with AMC, even though AMC as a company no longer existed. So technically, the AMC Eagle's new name was the Eagle Eagle, although it obviously was never marketed that way. Although more accurately, the 1988 model wasn't really marketed at all, as only 2,300 were sold after AMC ceased to exist. Sales of the Renault Medallion sedans and wagons began on March 1st of 1987 as 1988 models, only 8 days before Chrysler purchased all of Renault's shares. As a result, this meant the Medallion kept its Renault badging, but only for 1988. Imported from France, the Medallion was based on the Renault 21, where it competed in Europe against cars such as the Volkswagen Passat. In Europe, these were considered large family-sized sedans, but when imported to North America, the Medallion was technically in the mid-size category, although larger than most other mid-size cars here, as actor George C. Scott touted in their advertising. The Medallion was also offered as a wagon, which even had a longer wheelbase than the sedan, and even longer rear doors to provide easier access to the third row. However, the front-wheel drive Medallion wasn't exactly fast, as their 2.2-liter inline four-cylinder made only 103 horsepower.
Surprised? I imagine the competition will be too.
Once the 1988 model year ended, Chrysler rebranded the Medallion as an Eagle for 1989. Like they often did with their Mitsubishi imports, Chrysler touted the fact that the Medallion was an import, even with badging that said imported for Eagle. Yes, the 1980s was a time when Made in America badging could actually deter buyers, as imports had a better quality reputation. Despite the original agreement with Renault to have Chrysler keep importing it for 5 years, the Medallion was simply redundant in the Chrysler lineup, and imports ended in mid-1989.
Give me one good reason why you chose the Eagle Premier Limited.
Four-wheel disc brakes, leather-trimmed interior, air conditioning, power everything.
I only asked for one.
Take your pick.
The other model created by the AMC-Renault partnership was the Premier, which was based on the Renault 25. Because of its design coming from Renault, it has sometimes been referred to as the Renault Premier, although it was originally planned to be sold as an AMC model. Although it was never officially branded as a Renault, some of the early models did leave the factory with a mix of Renault and Eagle badging. Unlike the imported Medallion, the Premier was built at the same Brampton, Ontario plant that AMC had once owned and had been building the Eagle wagon.
Plus, there's even a Chrysler-style cup holder for your morning coffee.
Base models didn't have a Renault engine. Instead, it was an AMC-designed 2.4-liter four-cylinder. Although it was fuel-injected with an electronically controlled 4-speed automatic transmission, its peak horsepower was just 111. Not a lot of power to move a full-size sedan that was 10 inches longer than the Medallion. A better option, at least in terms of power, was a 3-liter V6 in the higher-end LX and ES trims that made 150 horsepower. This V6 was known as the PRV, as it was co-developed by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. Over the course of 25 years, variations of the same engine were in over 40 different models across all three automakers, and was even in the DeLorean DMC-12. Chrysler was contractually obligated as part of the AMC buyout to use this engine for at least 5 years.
Eagle Value Bulletin for July.
Once the Medallion was dropped, the Premier remained as the last holdout of the AMC and Renault partnership. By 1990, more Chrysler parts were making their way into the Premier, although the PRV-sourced V6 remained, and became the sole engine option by that year, as the less powerful AMC four-cylinder sold far less. Despite its boxy styling looking more at home in 1980 than 1990, it still had enough European flair for Chrysler to offer a rebadged version for Dodge, called the Monaco. The Monaco name had been used on 4 generations of 2- and 4-door sedans between 1965 and 1978, with the 1974 police version probably the most famous today.
Disco pants and haircuts, yeah.
The Renault-based Monaco was also added to the lineup to help use up the agreed supply of 260,000 PRV engines, as well as to fill the hole in Dodge's full-size sedan offering after the loss of the Diplomat in 1989, before Chrysler's new LH sedans were slotted to begin production in 1992 for the 1993 model year. Those LH models used the Premier as a starting point, and one of those LH models would also be an Eagle. More on that later.
Seems to me with all those safety features, insurance rates could actually drop.
No.
Despite the Eagle brand initially only having to exist to provide a home for the Renault models Chrysler got from AMC, Chrysler brought Mitsubishi models into the Eagle brand as well. From 1989 to 1996, the Eagle Summit was offered at Jeep Eagle dealers in the U.S. Sold as either a coupe, sedan, or wagon, it was a rebadged Mitsubishi Mirage for the coupes and sedans, or a rebadged Mitsubishi Expo LRV for the wagon. In Canada, from 1988 to 1992, the Eagle Vista was a rebadged Mirage coupe or sedan, or rebadged Mitsubishi Chariot wagon. Also only in Canada from 1991 to 92 was the Eagle 2000 GTX, which was a rebadged Mitsubishi Galant sedan. And for some odd reason, a nearly identical Dodge 2000 GTX was also sold in Canada. But the most well-known Mitsubishi to also have an Eagle version would be a product of the Diamond Star Motors, or DSM. DSM was a joint venture of Chrysler and Mitsubishi that first formed in 1985, specifically created to build 3 sport coupes, one marketed as a Mitsubishi, and 2 as Chrysler's. Built in a new plant in Normal, Illinois, production began on the Mitsubishi Eclipse, Plymouth Laser, and Eagle Talon. Although all 3 were essentially the same car, All three had their own unique styling. The Eclipse was the best seller of the three, but the Talon was a close second, and would ultimately be the best-selling model in the entire Eagle lineup.
This was the car I honed my skills with, and it could fit 3 kegs in the back.
Despite the Renault models not being part of Iacocca's original purpose for buying American motors, the Eagle Premier would ultimately prove one of the best parts of the deal in the long run for Chrysler. A new concept, called the Eagle Optima, was based on the Premier platform, and showcased Chrysler's new cab-forward design in 1990. After a positive public response on the car show circuit, this new concept was developed into the LH models that first went on sale in 1992 for the 1993 model year as the Dodge Intrepid, Chrysler Concord, and Eagle Vision. All three were built in the same Ontario plant that had built the Premier. Although the underlying design of all three cars was based on the very square Premier, the far more rounded style of the LH cars was a huge departure from anything Chrysler had ever offered before, and that was a good thing, as Chrysler sedans were in need of a sales hit. Sales of all three were strong enough that when the second generation LH was being planned in the mid-90s, the next Eagle Vision was being considered for 1999.
I love the 214 horses, speed-sensitive steering.
In fact, Chrysler made an effort to build a sufficient number of 1997 Visions to provide dealers with enough inventory to hold them over until the second-gen model arrived.
You forgot about the CD player. I believe these are yours.
But by the time the Vision joined the lineup alongside the Talon and the Mitsubishi source models, this is where the purpose of the Eagle brand became more blurred. The Talon and Vision leaned more on the sporty side, but each targeted entirely different buyers.
Well, aren't we speedy?
Whereas the subcompact Mitsubishi imports were anything but sporty and brought in economy-minded buyers, and all were on the same showroom floor.
Blindfolded Dan is trying to guess what car we got here.
Chrysler did the most advertising on the Vision and Talon, with a series of commercials starring actor Greg Kinnear. Kinnear got his first big break as the host of the E! Entertainment Channel's Talk Soup.
They revealed on Ricky Lake that everything about the relationship is perfect, except for the fact that the two are first cousins.
And admittedly, his Eagle commercials were a nice break from the typical ads Chrysler once had.
A Lexus SC 300.
It's Eagle Talon, Dan.
Right, okay, just give me a little hint. Can you tell me the color?
Despite these ads, it didn't help that owners of Jeep Eagle dealers focused most of their time and effort on the better-selling and more profitable Jeeps, leaving the Eagles, by comparison, to languish. And by the time the Vision arrived, there were no more Renault models left in the lineup, hence no models left that had to be under a separate brand. The Summit and Vista were gone by 1996, the Vision gone by 1997, and the Talon was the final Eagle model, lasting until 1998. Since the Eagle models were never sold in their own dealerships, and instead shared floor space with the Jeep, the impact of the dealer network with the loss of Eagle was minimal. When the announcement was made, there were only 2 Eagle models still in production, and although the Talon was initially a strong seller, it didn't exactly fit in well among the Jeeps it shared a sales floor with, nor was the sport coupe market large enough to support it. The model that had the best chance of success was the Vision, but it too was a redundant option, with the Dodge Intrepid easily filling the void the Vision left behind.
I'm going to need you to step out of the car, sir. Let's go.
Although the slowing sales of the Eagle brand were enough of a reason to consider phasing it out, it ultimately wouldn't have survived Chrysler's next big chapter, when they merged with Daimler-Benz in 1998 to become Daimler Chrysler. Daimler wasted no time on trimming unprofitable models and brands, which led to Plymouth being eliminated in 2001. Having only lasted 10 years, most of any remaining Eagle models today are around 30 years old, so the chances of seeing an Eagle on the road today are slim to none. The Eagle brand may seem like a failure, but considering it was created out of necessity to get the much more popular Jeep, it satisfied that need, but simply outlived its usefulness. Thanks for watching.
So, Barb, what kind of car are you driving now?
I just leased an Acura Legend.
Ouch.
If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 70s to mid-2000s that you barely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
Oh, it reminds me of my Acura. It's great. Why didn't you want me to test drive it?
Probably the least price.
I would guess she paid more.